Hello everyone, and thank you for choosing Two Pagans in a Pod podcast. If you live in the Great Lakes area, please join the Discord. If you are in Michigan, specifically the Southwest Michigan area, join the Facebook group at Heathens, Wiccans, and Pagans of Southwest Michigan. If you live in Wisconsin, join Beard's Facebook group, Wisconsin Pagan Resources. And if you'd like to check out either of us on various social media platforms, all of the links for everything is down below in the description. Thank you for choosing Two Pagans in a Pod podcast. Hope you enjoy the show. Welcome everyone to Two Pagans in a Pod podcast. I am your host today, Fro Double G, and joining me is Beard. So,
Beard.
Right at the start of the episode, I'm going to have to say there's probably going to be a bunch of background noise on my end. I apologize. Family's home. It's super loud here today. So I will do my best to mitigate it the best I can.
We are recording on a day that we do not normally record, so...
Yeah, and
My
part of the reason
bad.
we record on Mondays, as I'm sure you guys picked up on, is my family's not here. We got our ass whooped yesterday, both of us at work, though.
Well, I mean, to be fair, from the sounds of it, we got our asses whipped again today, so...
Yeah. Yes.
It's turned into one of those weeks.
Part of the reason why it's no camera Fro today. It's just not feeling it today, y'all. It just be like that. But, you know what I do feel like doing?
Starting with stanza.
Starting with a stanza. Stanza
Sounds
14.
good with me.
So, I guess I forgot to go over the standard who we're reading from. I have the Study Have 'Em All by Hugin and Moon in Publishing. Carrie Overton's the author. Focused as fuck. Don't buy this book. Watch our video on it. Beard, your turn.
We have the Translated Poetic Edda by Liam Hollander. Do recommend buy this book.
So you can go ahead and start off with your Hollander translation.
Okay. So, the stanza of 14. The 14th stanza. Drunk I became, dead drunk, forsooth. When I was with wise Fiolar, that bout is best, from which back fetches, each man his mind full clear. I don't know if it was the way I read that, or if that's just that stanza sounds like you're drunk reading it.
Well, let me hit you with the other ones and see what we got here then.
Okay.
Ray. Drunk was I then, I was overdrunk, in that crafty Jotun's court. But best is an ale feast when a man is able to call back his wit at once. Next we have Thorpe. Drunk I was overdrunk, at that cunning Fiolar's. It's the best drunkenness when everyone after it regains his reason. Fjalar. I'm going with that, Fjalar. And then last we got Bellows. Drunk I was dead drunk. When with Fjalar, wise I was. 'Tis the best of drinking, if back one brings his wisdom with him home. So all of these drinking ones, all just they're all just don't drink too much. That's just really what they are.
Yeah.
They're worded different ways. I think the last two have involved drinking. And most of it is don't drink to the point where you become stupid.
110% agree with that statement.
Yeah. 110 proof agree.
Yeah, I mean, there's not.
I'm excited for
not
next
much
week.
else
We're finally
to
done with the alcohol ones, though.
That will be nice.
That will
to
be
finally
nice.
be away from these ones.
Especially since we're not really drinkers, so we're both kind of just like, yeah, don't drink too much, guys.
Which I do have to spout one bit of irony.
You've been drinking
I
more.
am indeed drinking right now.
You know, if I would have known this was the beer podcast, I would have went, because I actually went this weekend and had just a couple beers with my buddy.
No,
I
this
still got
isn't.
some
This isn't.
leftovers.
This is
Mead.
This is mead.
Good for you. I haven't brewed my own fucking mead yet. I mean, ironically, I brewed mead like 8 years ago. I just haven't again.
It's fun. I have to finish getting the sediment out of the current batch, and if I can, then it's gonna be um the honey we found for that one. So long as it actually turns out good, I can order that honey in bulk. So
I just don't have
it'll
space, unfortunately.
That is the big thing. Like I could maybe at most get one more fermenter because of the fermenter that I bought doesn't take up a whole lot of room, and it takes up less room than using the jugs that I was using. But I wouldn't be able to push it much more beyond that. But then again, I'm also trying to figure out a recipe and start, actually brewing as a job. So there is that aspect for me.
I think you just need to find like a good standard, right? But we've gone over this. We've gone over this on the podcast. We actually have a topic for this week besides mead.
We do.
Pagan parenting. So, Beard.
Oh yeah.
What is pagan parenting exactly? What are we talking about here?
Well, the easiest way to put it, the simplest summary, is being a parent that's pagan and passing that on or teaching that to your kids, more or less. I think would be the easiest way to summarize it. It's definitely easier said than done. Because I mean, it's the whole thing is a balancing act. I'm sure that you would probably agree with that to some extent. Because I mean, you have to balance not. I don't know. In my opinion, I guess we'll narrow down the topic here and start with some stuff. So, pagan parenting, trying to teach your kids about religion, and I'm sure, any religion can probably equate or relate to this in some way, shape, or form. Because you want to teach your children and share that with them and have them have those shared experiences with you. But depending on your parenting style and how you want to raise your kids, you may not want to indoctrinate them or force it upon them. So it becomes a very, like I said, balancing act. So, like, to start with, kind of the worries of it first, is of course probably my personal biggest worry. I don't know if you would agree with this, Fro, is that concept of unintentionally indoctrinating my children into zealots of any sort of the matter. Definitely something I don't want to do, because I personally want to have my kids make the choice. I mean, if my kids want to grow up and be Christian, by all means, they're allowed to be Christian. If they want to grow up and, follow being Norse Pagan, like I'm doing my best to teach them and show them what it's about and explain things to them, cool. If they want to follow another form of paganism, cool. If they don't want to have religion at all, also cool. I want it to be their choice, but I want them to see the benefits that can come of being religious and having a belief in something, and regardless of what that belief is. My other... Do you have anything to add to that, Fro? Before I move on to some of the other points in the worries?
I mean, I would find it very rather difficult for me, especially since most of the way I've raised my kids have been from a very atheistic standpoint. Like, so it's really not a concern as much with me.
Fair.
Because I would just have to take the hard cut extreme. Or
Okay.
extreme opposite, sorry, than what I've already been doing. So yeah.
That's fair.
But for other people, for sure.
Yeah.
For me, my more main concern is how do I make this approachable as something that we've never approached.
And that is a very good point, because I mean, starting off has been, I mean, because I came out to, I guess for a little bit of context here. So I've only lived here in Wisconsin now for 7 years, 8 years tops. So not too much longer than, my son was born, Cash was born. And then I have 2 stepkids. So we haven't, the kids have always kind of known that I was pagan, but, I've never really done anything, kept it kind of solo to myself. But then this last year, with Cash being interested in it, and wanting to be involved in some of the stuff that I've done on my own, and then it turns out the other kids have wanted to learn and stuff. It's been difficult because, like, my stepdaughter, she's 15, she's in high school, so she has a better way, a better maturity to understand some of the stuff. But at the same time, too, she was raised with her grandmother being very Christian and very, like, Christian oriented for the family. So it's kind of a fine line that I have to use with her. I mean, she's interested, but she hasn't been, like, out of her way like Cash has been. Right. And then the same is with my stepson. My stepson, we only have him for the weekends. He is interested in mythology. He loves mythology. He loves reading about it. He's really hooked on Greek mythology right now. So it is kind of cool to have conversations with him, because I can kind of equate some of the stuff to him, or have him relate it to a story that he knows, or like the concept of such and such god, and explaining those things to him. But at his dad's house, his dad is very Christian, and his grandmother that he lives with is very Christian over there. They go to church, and and I don't know what denomination they are, but from the sounds of it, they're one of the denominations that goes to church every Sunday and Wednesday. So, it's a very big thing over there for him. So, again, it's that fine line of, I don't want to detract from Christianity and the positives that have been in their life because of it, but also I don't want to I don't want it to not share with them the positives of what the pagan, the Norse pagan path has been. But it's kind of a topsy-turvy one because of the history that's involved with some things with Norse paganism and paganism as general, and the conflict that's there. So I've had a couple conversations with my stepson because he asked about it, and I had to explain to a 10-year-old in a very interesting way, kind of the history behind it, and tried to put it into the historical context, not a like one side versus the other type context, which was very hard to do. I realized, especially to explain it in a way that a 10-year-old's going to understand. But I mean, and with that too, explaining all of these different things to the kids, especially Cash, my youngest, being that he's only 5, he will be 6 this year, is, since he has really been into wanting to do this, he wants to do the rituals with me. He, every time I've made a batch of mead, we've blessed the mead. He's always wanted to do that with me. And he's gone from mimicking me to like wanting to say his own things, which I think is impressive for a 5-year-old. But my next worry then, of course, is interacting with other kids outside of our home. Interacting with kids at school, interacting with kids out on the playground. Especially at that young of an age, they don't really have a concept of the difference, I guess, if that makes any kind of sense. But it is a concern that, like, Cash is going to say something, and then a kid who maybe has a very devout family in another religion is going to be against that, or that kid's not going to understand it, and it's going to lead to a fight or an argument that Cash, at his age can't, do. And then, the cascading domino effect of what that could cause. If it's at school, the school gets a complaint, and then we get a letter, or this, that, or the other thing. Like, there's any number of things that could pop up because of it. So that's something that I kind of have to think about and worry about. And I think is an important thing to keep in mind when you are teaching, especially younger kids, about, the different things. Which is why, like, last year for Christmas, we did Christmas and Yule, and we kind of kept them. We were doing them kind of at the same time, but kind of tried to keep them explained separately. And then this year when we did Easter and Ostara, so we did our Easter egg hunt, and then we did our Ostara quest, and we did our Ostara ritual, and then we had our Easter dinner. So we were trying to like keep it the same, but not the same too, which I do have to say is extremely difficult to do. And then kind of my last real worry is, again, like having to dumb things down for the kids. Because I can't exactly tell Cash the story of Loki getting it on with a horse.
I think we can not dumb them down for the kids. We can simplify them.
I guess that was the
and make some more appropriate for a younger audience.
Yeah, that's the better way to say it. Because I'm not necessarily dumbing them down or washing them out. I'm just trying to find ways to explain them that I don't have to get into the more graphic or "Daddy, what's this?" type conversation with a 5-year-old. Now again, like telling those stories or talking about those stories and or telling little tidbits to the other kids, I can be, with Jack, I can step it up a little bit, but I still have to kind of simplify it here and there because he's still just only 10. But then with our oldest, with my teenager, I can just flat out tell her the story how it is, and she understands. So that is, though it is helpful, it is still a really weird way to go about it because it's like I can explain the same story in 3 different ways to each of my kids, and I kind of have to in order to kind of explain it to them each in a level and a way that they're gonna understand. Which is definitely not a simple task in and of itself. But my main concern with that is, I don't want to.
As a great example, with your own kids, you could explain it, right? But you just can't go around in general, basically telling kids how Loki made Scotty laugh, right? Like,
right.
Some things you gotta be a little more tactful about.
Yeah, and it's definitely difficult. It's definitely hard to balance. Because I want to be able to tell them the story as they are, but at the same time, I have to be understanding of age and understanding and what's appropriate to tell a 5-year-old versus what's not appropriate to tell a 5-year-old or 10-year-old or a 15-year-old. But then, the other end of that is, well, by, having these 3 different versions of the story, you know, I don't want to tell it in a way that does the story disservice. Or isn't necessarily true to the saga, but at the same time, like you said, I can't exactly always go into the great detail.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it you just kind of with your own kids, you can know it much better, right?
Right, absolutely. I mean, definitely for um for any parent, who wants to tell the sagas or relay the sagas, I mean, definitely try to find like a kid's book or a more kid-oriented book. Read it first, and then try to put your own spin on it. I would say that would be my suggestion. 'Cause aren't you reading the Neil Gaiman book with
Yeah,
your
but we've
kids?
been kind of busy because it's dance competition season.
Ah, that's fair.
Yep. And softball season started up.
That's fair.
Yep. So we have practice like every
Uh,
night.
oof.
Yeah. Yeah.
But your kids are. I know your kids aren't high school. Your kids are what, middle school?
I have a high
Late
schooler and 2 elementary kids.
high school. Oh my goodness, that's right.
I have a kid that can drive, dude.
I have a
Yeah.
kid that can learn how to drive.
I mean, okay, mine still needs an adult because still technically only 15, but
That's fair.
give it time.
Yeah. Well, we need a working car first before we can teach her how to drive.
I'm safe. My kid can't drive a manual.
Well, you lucky dog, you.
And I drive a manual.
But to be fair, you are safe from me driving your car because I also cannot drive a manual.
Teach yourself.
Yeah, I need to. My wife is a big. She's fond of manual of stick shift.
Dude, I mean, if I lived like where it didn't snow, I would just get an automatic. Right? Like
Right.
it just, but throughout the wintertime, it's real nice when you're like, no. This hill's this is a second gear taker, nice and easy up a type hill. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And just other little shit like that. Although
Sounds fair.
driving a manual is definitely much more fun. You're not going to convince me
Yeah,
otherwise.
I can definitely agree that it would be more. I mean, because you don't have to put a lot of effort into driving automatic. You really don't.
Oh yeah, that's the nice thing. That's why I would get one if I didn't live anywhere where there was a bunch of snow and shit. Like, even though it's more fun to drive an automatic or a manual, I do enough driving where it's like, yeah, give me the one that's just easier.
Yeah, I mean that was. I mean, part of why I never learned was because when I finally did get around to being of age and learning to drive, I lived in a big metropolitan area, so
I
having
taught
to battle
myself
with the
how at 25, 26. And I literally bought some like $400 beater and just practice on back roads.
That's fair.
I know that's complete opposite of the option you said you had, but
Yeah, I mean, I was living in Phoenix at the time, Phoenix, Arizona, and it was, yeah. You don't want to learn stick shift while trying to drive on rush hour traffic freeways because nobody there knows how to drive. So, um, no offense to anybody who currently lives in Arizona.
yeah, fuck you, Riggs. Joke from other podcast. I don't even know if he's in Phoenix, but anyways, Beard.
I mean,
Let's
from
move on
what I've heard,
to
it
the
sounds like
next
he
year.
is. But anyway, yes. So, balancing in general. I mean, I've kind of already kind of pushed the concept of this, that it's definitely a balancing act.
Oh, I wholeheartedly thought
Uh,
we were going to skip this because you kind of already wrapped it in the first part.
I did. Um, yeah, I covered all these points
You
already. So
really
we'll
did.
just we'll just
Yeah,
we'll move into the last section.
the good
Um,
stuff.
the good stuff,
The good
the
stuff.
stuff of, the reason you do it, the whole, I don't want to say necessarily the whole point of doing it, but what you're really going to get out of it. And first and foremost is you involving them and teaching them these things and having them part of ritual and including them in ritual and just sharing these moments with them, even with just mundane things like, blessing the mead for me when we make a batch of mead. It creates a bonding moment with your child. Regardless of your child is 5 or 15, you're doing something together. And that is, in my opinion, far more important, far more valuable uh of a takeaway than anything else, um in my opinion. I mean, if you feel other way, please let us know in the comments, or Fro, if you have anything
I
that
do
you
believe
think is more
I
beneficial out
initially
of it.
responded. I deleted it because we clean up our notes before we record. I initially responded with bonding moments, and then the gif of the guy, the Asian dude, saying emotional damage. That was my
Hmm.
contribution to the notes this week.
That's
No,
fair.
no, I agree. A lot of it's the bonding moments and the fun you get to have. I do a lot of like crafting little shit and like try to focus on like a lot of making stuff and getting the kids involved with that. So yeah, the bonding moments, it's the good stuff. I agree.
Hmm. The other, yeah, I'm maybe this is more for me having stepkids, um, that I haven't been in their life their entire lives. Um, is getting to teach them a different way to think about things. Um, it kind of is a part of a bonding moment. I mean, or it's more of like a specific kind of bonding moment, I would say. So you could kind of lump it in with that, but y- you know, it you know, telling them the sagas and teaching them the sagas and trying to make them think about things has been really cool. Like I was telling, just for an example, I was telling Cash about Ratatasker and the fact that he runs up and down the tree and he carries insults. Um, and my stepson was there too, Jack, and he was listening. And Cash was like, "Oh, Ratatasker, he's a little squirrel and blah blah blah. He's cute and stuff." Because he also casual occasionally plays Smite and stuff, and so he kind of equates it to Ratatasker from the game from Smite. Um, but he didn't really think too much about it. But then kind of Jack had an aha moment of, well, that's not cool. Or like he asked, I think the question he asked was like, well, is it that they're actually insulting each other, or is Ratatasker insulting them? And I go, well, that's a wonderful question, Jack. We really don't know. It could be that Ratatasker is insulting them, or it could be that he is carrying the insults. We don't have the full extent of the story. And he goes, well, yeah, that's not good. I go, yeah, it isn't good not having the whole story, but even if he is carrying the messages, it's not good, is it? And he goes, no, we shouldn't act that way. And I go, that's right. We shouldn't act that way. We shouldn't carry messages between each other. Or, we shouldn't carry an insult from one person to another. And he goes, yeah, that's not cool. And then Cash was like, yeah, that's really bad.
I love it.
Um, so I mean, it was a simple little exchange, and it was, I mean, and is that really the point of the whole story with Ratatasker, taking the potential insults back and forth between the eagle and the serpent? maybe
Probably
not.
not.
Again, not
But
having the full extent of the picture, but the lesson that they took out of it was brilliant because it was indeed that isn't something that someone should do, or someone, you shouldn't ask someone to do that either. Um, because like then I could see the wheels turning in both of their heads of like, do we feel bad for the squirrel or do we not feel bad for the squirrel? Like, should you know should we be concerned for the squirrel? Like, uh but then it got their wheels turning a little bit, and for them to have that realization and make that comment, I thought was really cool. um I was also like, another good example was um I was telling Cash about the story of Fenrir and how he gets chained up. And as a 5-year-old, he legitimately asked me, well, why did they lock him up? And I had to explain it. And you know, I, again, like, I'm trying to simplify it for him, uh, which was difficult because that's not really a story that can be super simplified without kind of losing some context sometimes, at least in my opinion. Um, so I basically just had to put it to him that Odin was afraid of him and asked that he get him locked up, and then it kind of my mistake of putting it that way, because then I got the question of why was Odin afraid of him, and then I had to explain Ragnarok to him, and then it kind of like continued to tangent because then he wanted to know what Ragnarok was, and then I had to explain to a 5-year-old what the apocalypse was. Um,
I think that's kind of a failing on your end there, Beard, with you trying a little too hard to simplify it there. Because
yeah,
in
and
oversimplifying it, you overcomplicated it. You
yeah,
could have, I mean, Grant, I don't know how the conversation went, but from what you just explained there, from me, you could have said Odin had him chained up because Odin was told a prophecy, or I don't know if your kid knows prophecy, right? But was told of a fortune. Someday Fenrir might come and bring the end of the world. Boom.
yeah. I probably could have done that and saved myself a long-winded attempt to tell him through his 20 questions.
Now, the way you said it was perfect if you're trying to keep him engaged, right?
Right.
Because then, if he is like, if fish nibbling at the hook here, right? Throwing the hook out there and be like, oh, because Odin thought he might bring Ragnarok, and then you can do the 20 questions. Well, what's Ragnarok? And do all that. But if you're just like real succinctly trying to get the point across, then I think he kind of failed in that aspect. I guess it's depending.
Yeah.
How are you trying to play out the conversation? You made it sound like you were looking for the shorter route that time, though.
I was just trying to tell him, because I was playing Smite at the time, and I was playing Fenrir, and he saw Fenrir, and he was kind of interested because he thinks that Fenrir is a really cool looking character. So I was just trying to explain it to him. And yeah, and then
Then I guess my suggestion is, if you're ever trying to get for a real succinct answer, first and foremost, don't use Old Norse words. Just say it what it means in English, or what we assume it to mean, or how we use it, right? Such as,
right.
You don't gotta say Ragnarok, just say end of the world. And I guess just get right to the point. Like, the point of this god is this blank. Like, at least for that meaning. For like, again, we'll say, let's say he asked about Ratatask, even though you've already talked about it. He's like, oh, Ratatask is just the messenger that runs up and down a tree delivering messages. Boom. No need to mention the serpent or the eagle, but you could, right? And that's where you can put in the 20 questions. Ratatasker runs messages from a serpent to an eagle, right? Or
right.
like then throw in the names or however you want. But if you're just going for the real simple short, you're like, what is the point of the story lesson? Or why are they the one in this story? Boom. Right?
Yeah. I've definitely had moments where it's like, okay, I've shot myself in the foot. But I mean, and that's the perfect example of it. Like, because again, having kids at all three age ranges, I might start off telling a story to Cash, but then Jack's the one who grabs onto it. So then I kind of have to adjust, or I'll put myself in those conundrums with Cash, where Cash will start asking 20 questions, and it's like, oh, okay, I did myself a disservice by starting it off this way. I could have explained this differently.
It happens. It's all part of the experience, man.
Right? But at the same time, too, it kept him engaged. It kept him curious. It created a bonding moment that we shared with.
Mm-hmm.
He got to learn a little bit more. I got to try and do my best to explain things and probably look like a complete idiot. But again, yeah, it's all part of the process. It's all part of, trying to share this knowledge and express it to him and get him to understand it. So that way, as he gets older, he's got a basis or a context. And as he, if he continues on the path and follows on the path, and I can teach him more, then he's got, a basic understanding of some of these things, and then, fill in some of the gaps or give him more detail and, increase upon that understanding. So, I mean, ultimately, I am setting him up hopefully well for as he gets older, but at the same time, only time will really tell on how well I've done.
Right.
uh I won't know any of that until he gets older. So, you know and ultimately it is I do I'm sure I probably already prefaced it well enough, but just to preface it again, this is how, these are my thoughts, these are my things, how I'm thinking about going about it. um is there any wrong or right way to parent and teach this stuff to your kids? No.
Yes.
Well,
Well, what?
okay. That's fair.
No, the answer is yes. If you don't allow them to explore anything except your option, you're doing it wrong.
That's fair. Yes. I will say that.
Just, I mean,
Um
I'm pretty sure most people who come from any sort of religious background that's not pagan will understand why.
yeah, hopefully.
I'd say it should be pretty self-explanatory. Like,
should be. We can only hope.
I mean, I'm not going to explain it, so it's going to be self-explanatory.
Right. I mean, if you need explanation, I guess just DM us on our various platforms.
Better idea. Go talk to a Christian.
Touche. But yeah, touche.
That's how you know what? That's how we're ending it right there.
Right? Yeah, I think that's fair.
Okay, we're not going to end it right there, but we are wrapping it up now.
Yeah.
We pulled that like dead cut at one time. We can't always just dead cut like that. Like we gotta say, thank you, great having you, good episode, things like that.
The good formalities.
Yeah, the wrap up. That's definitely how we think on pagan parenting. See now I've just ruined everything. Now we are ending it. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much, everyone, for listening to this episode of Two Pagans in a Pod podcast. We thank you so much for listening. And if you really enjoyed our content and you enjoyed this episode of the podcast, be sure to leave us a like, follow, or subscribe on whatever media of viewing or listening that you've been enjoying this episode on. Additionally, you can always check out a lot of our other content, such as the Modern Norse Library that Fro does here on YouTube, Or you can even check out our UPG sharing episodes, which can be found on all medium spectrums that we post on. Additionally, don't forget we always have that segment where we like to share pagan artwork, so be sure to drop us a line via email, or maybe even contact us on Twitter and share with us your art, maybe a poem, or any other kind of medium that you would enjoy us sharing on our podcast, and we'll be sure to get it on the next episode of Two Pagans and a Pod podcast. Thank you guys again so much, and we'll catch you next time.